What is going on YouTube? Dr. Iway here, and as promised, this is the open field tier list. I've already, since this video is going to be longer ish, because I've recorded it already and the audio was trash, so this should be better audio. This one, you wouldn't know because the other video you can't see. However, I've already took the liberty of placing them in order because the video would have been quite long trying to explain it. So I'll explain like what makes these commanders, and generally speaking, placed in the tier that they are. I'll talk about the top three and kind of like the meta commanders, which are S tier, and then I'll just explain the rest, pretty generally speaking, because you're most interested in the cream of the crop, creme de la creme, huh? As the friends in France would say. So I'll explain each tier. So with the S tier here, the S tier commanders, S plus rather, these are going to be the best commander for each troop type, in my opinion. There can only be one best, right, for each troop type. And for the infantry, and I even put these in order what I think. Like for infantry, I mean CPO does everything. It's the proc damage, health, debuff, good AoE damage, shielding factor for himself and teammates. He can reduce skill damage taken, like busted. But the same reasons, like when you're swarming something in the open field and Nevsky's on the case, like they're fucking done. And that's pretty much like his main thing. And then he does a shit ton of skill damage, and he makes the your second march, whatever this, I mean not second march, but whatever the second commander is, to do way more skill damage. And then he has like tons of health when he gets swarmed. Like it, when you're off territory, he gets even more tanky. Ooh. And then Boudica's main gimmick is that a lot of people forget about this part too. It's two pieces of it. You can slow down targets with your active skill, and you do that crazy debuff. I believe it's 35% um skill damage taken that they take. So it's like having um all stacks of odd or all stacks of Tamaris, like right after you do your active skill. It's quite strong. That's why I put Ring of Horn on her. I want that to pop off first. Um, Ring and Horn, like Horn of Fury. That's why I put that on her, because you want that to pop off first, like ideally. Um, and then the S tier commanders are basically like the meta. Like this is what you probably um want to use. And then like I know like Artemisia is like low key kind of meta too. Um like one of the like if you're not using E Song, like you're gonna use one of these two if you have it over E Song. Some people will. Um and I think like with Joan, I mean the active skill is great. The fact you can fire it off twice every other skill cycle is cool. Because that's like just constant rage gain for your murder ball. The AOE silence on him is good. Tons of skill damage. Same thing. He gives rage as well. William does. He can stop skill damage effects, enhance skill damage effects from happening if you hit multiple targets with the AOE. That's a cool gimmick. Like basically everybody in the meta like does good AOE damage. For the most part, they have march speed. They're giving usually um, some pretty heavy stats. A lot of times, and they have some type of debuff or great buff associated with them. That's sometimes both. That's all these commanders, and that's kind of what makes these guys meta, is all of that stuff. Now, in the A tier commanders, they're not bad, but usually you would prefer a more S tier commander. And like I know that this list is, you know, I'm trying like this dude is basically S, but I'm gonna put him in A, like Honda, like because a lot of the things that he's doing, I'm gonna put him in S because I think it's the difference between him and the rest of these guys. But he's the best. If you're gonna put him in A, he's definitely the best. It's my list, so I want to do a few tweaks and edits as I'm working through this. I think all these other guys are A tier. Like, yeah, you can use them. They're not bad. You should not be ashamed to use any of these commanders. You should not be ashamed to use any of these commanders. But they're not necessarily the best commanders, and they're definitely not the best of the best commanders. But they still have a lot of the things that you would like from the S tier commanders, so maybe less of it. Like, he has good tanky stats. He has his debuff isn't as powerful as it probably used to be, but it's okay. So he doesn't have like everything about him, right? And Esong, yeah, he has a cool AoE damage, good skill damage, but he's not really bringing that many stats. He's not really bringing a lot of defense or march speed with him. So it's like, yeah, he's still good, but like Artemisia, Honda, or Nebu might offer more as a secondary commander. So that's kind of like this list. And some of these commanders may be a little bit more gimmicky than others. Like, that's why I kind of put these other guys lower, because like I feel like the ones closer to here are more solid in my opinion than some of these other ones, depending on what type of player you are. Obviously, if you're like cavalry focused, like, then Attila goes way up maybe. Now these B tier commanders are situational, right? Where like you're only going to use a Monitori if you have Artemisia. You're only going to use this CJ if you have them. You're going to use Mehmed if you don't have another secondary commander to pair with that commander. Like, for a while I was using Mehmed with Nevsky, but then I got Jones. So he's like one of those guys, kind of like Honda, where you can pretty much put him anywhere. But anywhere that you would put Honda, you would put anywhere you would put Honda, you could put Mehmed. But if you have Honda, then Mehmed gets the axe type of thing. If you're building out like more, like, all of these calf commanders aren't necessarily trash in the open field. Some of them are actually okay. Minamoto and Chandragupta, in my opinion, especially. But with all of these great calf commanders, unless you're building like a fourth cavalry march, third cavalry, maybe even third, you might use one of these guys. Maybe. But definitely when you're talking about 4 or 5 cav marches, that's when some of these other commanders probably come into play, right? Is in a situation like that. So that's what I'm saying there. B tier, like more situational. Like, yeah, not Ethelflat. Mulan is really good with Trajan. That's probably the only situation I can think of where you would use it. And Takeda is really just for the Attila. So a lot of these commanders are more situational based, depending on like your specific configuration, if you can fit them onto your team. I don't even think that they're necessarily weaker all the time. It's just really dependent on how many marches you got and what you're doing, right? Because if you have less marches, then you might as well be more stricter in what you're using. But as you are increasing your roster to 6-7 marches, you may have to dip down here because that's what you have expertise available to you, and this is what might work best for your team and your gear and equipment that you have. The cant ranks are basically garrison commanders or commanders that aren't really meant for the field, so I'm not going to assess them like they should be meant for the field, because they're not. F tier is basically like gathering commanders, low shitty gold key commanders and stuff like that. D tier, like, some of these guys are technically speaking meant for the field, but they really don't work that well. And then I just think these two are the better of all these D tier. Like, they're still pretty trash. Don't use them. Like, I wouldn't go below B if you can avoid it. Like, maybe you're new to Season of Conquest, and maybe you're going to, as a whale, you're going to use some of these other ones, but you want to try to get to the cream of the crop as soon as you can. If you can just get these 3 commanders and pair them with even A and B tier secondary, you're probably going to perform okay. So that's the list. Hopefully you enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Like and subscribe only if you enjoyed. Amen. And I'll see you in the next video.